We've got a big one tonight. What a great game is set to be played out west. Duke basketball will take on the Arizona Wildcats. It's going to be a fun one. Let's talk about it on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome on into another episode of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. My name is JJ Jackson. It's so great to have you here with us on Friday, November 22nd, 2024. Locked On Blue Devils is your one-stop shop, a daily podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where we discuss everything taking place inside Duke athletics. Duke football gets set for senior day tomorrow, taking on Virginia Tech, but our focus here today is the Duke basketball game a little bit later tonight against the Arizona Wildcats. Who better to break this matchup down than our good friend Isaac Trotter from 247 Sports, who's going to be here with us throughout the course of the show to break it down, what matters, what are the matchups to be on the lookout for, and so much more. If you have not done so already, please be sure to follow and subscribe to Locked On Blue Devils for free, wherever it is that you get your podcasts. Leave us a 5-star rating and written review. Go ahead and like this video if you're watching it on YouTube. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Share it with your friends. Really appreciate you being a part of the Locked On Blue Devils community. There was all this chatter over the years about Duke basketball head coach Mike Krzyzewski not being the biggest fan of true road games within the non-conference, unless it was the ACC or Big Ten Challenge as it was. We didn't see very many of these matchups that we'll get to see played a little bit later tonight. Enter head coach Jon Scheyer, enter home and home agreements, and now Duke gets to make the return trip out west to take on Arizona. So to break it all down, here is the aforementioned Isaac Trotter joining us on the program once again, and it's the perfect time of year, Isaac, to have big-time matchups like this, man. I'm excited to see this one play out between Duke and Arizona.
No question. I think this week you could maybe make a case is just as good as those first 4 days of March Madness. So this is the best. And to have some of these home and homes is big time. I think we've started to see that throughout the sport, what type of atmospheres these games look like. And look, Arizona Duke, this is maybe a matchup of the best two defenses in college basketball. I know it's a little bit of a hot take after what happened with Arizona against Wisconsin, but I think defensively, these two teams can really lock down each other. So it's going to be a war.
I'm excited to talk about the defense in this one then, because you take a look at both of these teams and you could look from the outside in. Duke, Arizona, it is in some ways a rivalry going back and forth. They played the 2001 national championship game against one another. They've got a couple of other NCAA tournament meetings. The Wildcats have won 3 in a row over Duke. Duke's last win was that 2001 championship game, which I think if you're Duke, you'll take that win. But it's time to kind of switch that around. So in your eyes, is defense kind of what sets the tone for a matchup like this?
This is going to be really decided, I think, in transition, because the MO with Arizona so far throughout the tenure under Tommy Lloyd is they are an elite transition offense. And so what does that mean for Duke? That means your offense has to take them out of it by taking really good shots. And when you don't take good shots, you better get back, talk, match up, and find guys. If Arizona's running in transition and getting 20, 22, 23 points in transition, Duke's losing. And if you can control that by controlling the tempo, by controlling your shot selection, by not taking bad shots that lead to runouts, that's going to be really, really important. Because I think when both of these teams get into the half court, I think they can guard each other pretty well. But in that open floor, I feel like that's where the difference in the game is. If Arizona's transitions offense is great and Duke's transition offense is struggling, Arizona's winning, and vice versa. That will kind of be the key for Duke to pull out a huge road win.
Well, yeah, then if you look at that specifically, if we look at Duke already in their first big test of the season against Kentucky, in the second half there were certainly moments where it felt like Duke just wasn't in a rhythm offensively, right? There were also moments where Duke had wide open shots and just weren't knocking them down, which was really tough to see. In big-time matchups, when you go 4 of 22 from three-point range, it's going to be hard to win those type ball games.
No question. I kind of went through every single one of those against Kentucky, all of those threes. And if you chart them, I think they took 12 threes at one point in a row and went 1 of 12 at one section there. And 11 of the 12, I would say, would be good shots. So it's hey, we're getting the shot we want, and it's not going in. to me, that seems good process, wrong result. So you just got to keep going back to it. I think it was easy to kind of pile on Duke's late game offense and be like, well, there wasn't enough movement, and look at like they're just really standing around a little bit, and they're not getting. And I understand that to a certain extent, but they also got really good shots out of it sometimes too. So that's like the push pull with it. And I think that this group is pretty young, and like you're going to have to execute at a high level, and this is going to be a really good test. I would be shocked if some of those lessons learned against Kentucky don't kind of come into play against Arizona. Albeit though, this Arizona team hits you like they are physical, and you go down some of their personnel. They are big, strong, and tough at about 5 positions. So that's going to be a little bit different than Kentucky, where there was a couple guys there. Kobe Brea is probably the main where Duke was like, where is Kobe Brea? And I am hunting him 24/7 until I get a bucket.
Well, fortunately for this Duke team, this is a game where their size can show up in a matchup like this, and trying to use that to their advantage. I want to go back to sort of the end of the game there, because everyone wants to talk about Cooper Flagg and the couple of turnovers that he had there in the last minute of the game. I would imagine if we're in a similar spot in the games to come, Isaac, Cooper Flagg is still going to have the basketball. That talented of a player. We see him currently on the season leading Duke in assists. So he's also able to set guys up and that sort of thing. And knowing the type of competitor that he is, and just hearing him talk, like I truly think he wants to be in that type of a situation again, just to prove to the world and prove to himself that, yeah, I can get this done.
No question. I think he's going to have brighter days, especially in late moments or late game moments. I think you can use him in some different ways as well, too. I think there could be opportunities where instead of him being the primary ball handler, with the clock dwindling, maybe he's the guy who's setting the screen with 12 seconds to go in the shot clock and can kind of work his way as a roller and trying to get downhill that way. Or maybe you're just doing some more, inverted post-ups, just maybe on the side, not necessarily in the middle of the floor where you have like a lot less gaps where the defense is kind of collapsing a little bit. Maybe you try to do it from like those long wing sections where you can kind of isolate him a little bit easier. So I think there's some give and take there with it. Like maybe he doesn't have to have the ball 24/7, because let's be honest, one of the elite traits of Cooper is he's an amazing cutter. So having him without the basketball and getting to utilize his cutting is going to be really important as well. But he's going to get better. And I thought, for 38 minutes against Kentucky, he looked unbelievable. And it was like, oh my gosh, like all of this is coming together in, the biggest of stages. And I think it got a little bit marred by the ending. Not for me though. Like after watching those 38 minutes, I was just like blown away by the type of competitor he is, and just how the skill and at his size is pretty stupid.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, Duke's going to feel a target on their back wherever they go. That's been the case for the longest time when you think about Duke basketball. And I would imagine that's going to be the case once again tonight in Arizona at the McHale Center. Rowdy atmosphere that we're walking into, and just excited to see how Cooper Flagg steps up to that challenge.
It's just a different team too, especially like I feel like the job descriptions for what Duke wants to do is so different against Arizona than it was against Kentucky. The question I have with Arizona, and their half-court offense is not as clean as Kentucky's has been. Their half-court offense can get really stingy because they don't shoot a lot. When they put their starters out there, Jaden Bradley is not a plus shooter. KJ Lewis is not a plus shooter. Trey Townsend is not a plus shooter. Whoever they have at the 5, whether that's Matthias Krivas or Toby Awaka, they are not plus shooters. The only real shooter in that starting 5 is Caleb Love, who we know really, really well. And then obviously there's going to be times when Anthony Delorso, the transfer from Campbell, comes off the bench and he adds a pop. But I feel like Duke defensively, if they can really get in those gaps and force some of these tough jumpers, that's going to be super important, because it's different when you're playing against a Kentucky where it's like, all right, we got Jackson Robinson, you got to be ID'd on the perimeter, and Kobe Brea, you got to be ID'd on the perimeter, and Kirk Reese, when he comes in, he's going to come off those screens from 30 and he will fire. It's going to be a little bit more compact, and Arizona wants to kind of crush you on the glass. That's where I think Duke has to be. When it is compact, you got to turn and you got to hit somebody, because they're going to come hit you. And whoever hits the other person first usually tends to have it a little bit of an advantage on the glass. This game is going to be, I think, there was some like fun, sexy parts of basketball with the way Kentucky is. This game is a lot more meat and potatoes, and it's going to be really, really physical from the jump. And
I can't wait to watch it play out. We're excited to talk a little bit more about this matchup and players that can make an impact on this one after we take our first break here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. All right, Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less than on at least 2 players for a shot to win up 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long. It's the best place to get real money sports action. Again, 10 million users. You can join them by signing up today. PrizePicks invented the flex play, which means you could still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect. You could double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. Sign up today and you can get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It is guaranteed. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Once again, download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. PrizePicks is a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. As we get ready for Duke and Arizona tonight, Cooper Flagg is getting all the headlines so far early in the season for Duke. He leads them in every single counting stat possible. He's going to be at the top of the scouting report for Tommy Lloyd and that Arizona coaching staff. But I'm excited about to talk about some of the other players for Duke who could make a big-time impact in this one. And I actually want to shy away from another freshman. I want to go for the veteran of this Duke basketball team and a guy who's gotten off to a really strong start to his junior season. How about Mr. Tyrese Proctor, Isaac, shooting 50% from three-point range, doesn't have the ball in his hands in a playmaking setup so far this year as often as he has in years prior. We talked last year about the lack of kind of transition takes and transition baskets that Proctor was taking. He seems to be more comfortable through these first 4 games.
Yeah, he looks a lot more assertive of like, hey, what's my job description and what am I supposed to do? And again, like he has to shoot the basketball. And I think a lot of people, you talk to that Duke coaching staff and they would tell you that the percentages were lying with him a little bit lately. Like he is a better shooter than the percentages. And now you're starting to see that a little bit. But for me tomorrow, again, it's all going to be about defense for him because he is going to have a huge challenge, whether that's with Caleb Love, Jaden Bradley, KJ Lewis, doesn't matter. I think he's going to get a little bit of time on all of them. I would assume he gets the Love assignment. And I just think that like you have got to pick Caleb Love up in transition early, make him uncomfortable, make him take some of those contested off the dribble threes. And if he makes one, great. But like he's also probably going to shoot 5 or 6 of those. So like I think that like that's the area that Tyrese has to be super locked in on, is not letting Caleb Love get anything easy early, because the moment he gets something good early, his mindset completely changes. And you can kind of take him out of that's kind of what Wisconsin did. They were able to take him out of the game at times. And if you're able to do that, Arizona's going to have a hard time generating offense. So Proctor offensively has been great. Just keep knocking down his catch and shoot threes, attack those closeouts, just continue to be solid on that end. He's not turning it over a ton. Last I checked, I need to check his turnover rate lately, but defensively he is going to have to be, super, super dialed in. And he doesn't have to do it alone, but when he's on the floor, he has to be awesome on defense.
Well, and in some ways that Love assignment that, it's fair to think Proctor will pick that one up. That's got to feel good for Duke. He's got the most matchups against the guy, right? It's only Proctor and Foster who are returning from last year's team, but being a third-year player for Duke like Proctor is, he had 2 head-to-head matchups with Caleb Love when he was still playing for the Tar Heels. So in that regard, this is a challenge that I think he's going to be excited about and feel at least a little bit of comfort knowing that he's already seen this guy play head-to-head before.
No question. I think the best thing about Duke is that you can throw so many different matchups at Caleb Love, more from just like a defensive coverage type of thing, because when Kaman Malawak is on the floor, he's probably going to be in that deep drop coverage, and Proctor's going over every single top of every ball screen to try to contest shots. And then when Malik Brown comes into the floor, like he can be a guy who blitzes those ball screens. And so you're throwing a little bit of different things at him. I think you could see some switching with Cooper Flagg potentially switching onto Caleb Love. All of those different defensive concepts can make him think instead of play. And I think that's where you're trying to really try to get it. Like, hey, make you think, keep thinking, like keep having to try to dissect us defensively. Hey, do I know what coverage is going to come this time? Oh, wait, who's subbed into the game? Like if you're trying to think all of those things instead of just play, that's where I think Duke could seriously, kind of make some hay.
Okay, so Cooper Flagg, Tyrese Proctor, another freshman, that I'm expecting to have a big-time game would be Con Knippel, who in that Kentucky game, Proctor, Flagg, and Knippel played all 20 minutes of the second half. Those were the guys early on in the season that John Shire wanted to keep out there, but it was Con Knippel who, you look at the box score, 5 of 20 from the floor, 1 of 8 from the three-point line. Not a good performance in the big-time game. I think he probably wants to correct that, and I think it's going to be really big for Duke if he's able to step up and have a big game against Arizona.
Huge. And it's not going to be easy because, again, like these Arizona defensive guards are just pests. Like KJ Lewis is 6'4" and 205 pounds and looks like a fire hydrant. Like he is enormous. Jaden Bradley, when you get that switch onto him, he refuses to get back down. Like he's 6'3", 185 and awesome, like defensively. And so that's where I think with Con, it's just like, all right, like give it up, keep moving the basketball, because these one-on-one isolation possessions really play into perfectly what Arizona wants to do. I think he has to try to buy into more of scoring through osmosis, whether that's cuts, whether that is, running in transition, whether that's, attacking those long closeouts. Like he doesn't have to make it complicated, because when you kind of dribble the ball against Arizona, you're in hell. And I think what you saw again in that Wisconsin game, especially against Arizona, in that Wisconsin-Arizona game, Arizona will foul a little bit. And if the refs are, if you can snuff that out early, what the refs are calling, there could be a situation where Con, just using smart cuts and understanding situations, and when he gets that one step, being able to get to the rim and just using his shot fakes, if the refs are calling it, this could be a game where Con shoots 10 free throws. If Con shoots 10 free throws, Duke's winning.
Yeah. Hopefully we see something like that, and hopefully you get to see how aggressive a playmaker he can be, because Con Knippel, again, is of this freshman class, one of the players coming in we weren't speaking as highly about. You look at the rankings, and somebody like Isaiah Evans was ahead of him in that regard, but it's been Knippel who's been on fire so far to start the year. I'm looking, if you take the Kentucky game out of it, so far this season, he's 9 of 18 on three-pointers this season. I gave Proctor love for being a 50% three-point shooter, and Con Knippel certainly can shoot at a really high clip the rest of the year, and I think he's going to want to have another big performance.
Yeah, he will. And I think the thing too with Con is just like, again, early buckets in transition, just get something good going early to just get him feel comfortable, because he is wired to score. And I think he can score from all three levels. The best part about Arizona as well too, is you're going to see a lot of those different coverages as well defensively, but more often than not, they like to play a lot of that deeper drop coverage. So I think some of those mid-range little floaters in the middle of the paint, like he's so good at playing off of 2 feet and understanding those coverages and being able to attack those. So Arizona's great at the rim. They have awesome rim protection. They have awesome pop on the perimeter. But if you can get into the middle of the floor and make shots against them, that's an area where Con could seriously see some game. And again, I feel like with him, it's just like, also, what are you bringing defensively? Because there were times where Kentucky went at him defensively as well. Arizona's going to try to be physical with him, and he has to play an A+ game on the defensive end if Duke wants to, this would be one of the best wins of the year, because that Arizona team that lost to Wisconsin, I would encourage Duke fans to throw that game out of the window. That was one of the worst officiated games I've ever seen in the history of basketball. Like, it was horrific. Like, that will not happen again. This team is, I have them power rated in the top 10 nationally. They're really, really good. And if you're able to go into their place and win, you're talking about this and maybe Auburn's win over Houston as the best 2 wins of the season so far this year, and a college basketball season that's a couple weeks old.
You heard it here first. Isaac Trotter, not a fan of 63 combined fouls, 87 combined free throws. Tough to watch, man. Yeah, hopefully.
Brutal.
Brutal. We don't have that type of matchup in this one. So for Duke, you talk scoring, and it's been a lot of Flagg and Proctor and Knippel, the guys that we've discussed already here today. Quietly, Common Monlawatch is riding 3 straight games in double figures. We keep getting Duke releasing these mic'd up clips of John Shire in practice, yelling at the guards for not throwing the ball at the rim and letting the big fella do his thing by catching it up there. I would imagine his offensive ability is going to continue to come along and be more and more of a focal point.
This is going to be a huge game. This is like 2 skyscrapers going after each other, because Malawach is enormous. Mutias Krivas for Arizona is 7'2" and 265 pounds. This is this is a huge matchup between 2 guys that are just enormous. So you might throw those up near the square. Krivas can go up and go get him too. And I think the beauty of this game is that Arizona's front court is loaded. Toby Awaka is going to come in, and he's 6'8", 250, and just super strong. Henry Visar, 7 foot, 220 sophomore that can really shoot it a little bit. I think Maliwach's ability, not only offensively to kind of punish teams on the other end with his offensive rebounding and the lob threat that he has, but defensively as well. He has to be in tune with what the coverages are, because Visar is a shooter, Awaka and Krivas aren't. There's going to be times where he's guarding a shooter, has to know what to do, has to know how to get out there. And then there's going to be other times where it's like, hey, no, you're good. Come on, just stay in the paint, be the rim protector that you are, and understand your coverages on that end. So it's going to be a big test for him, because I don't know if those lobs to the rim that have been there in the last few games are going to be there against Arizona with this front line. It's going to be, but if he can win those, I'll tell you what, NBA scouts are going to be all about that, because this would be a big time opportunity for him to really elevate his stock.
No doubt. I think it's a massive game for both of these teams. I think the stars are going to step up. A bigger question becomes, what does it look like the further down the line you get? Can bench players for both of these teams start to make an impact? How about that be our final tease here when we get ready to take our last break here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. We'll come back and talk a little bit more about the bench production set up in this one. All right, Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends over at Z-Biotics. The pre-alcohol probiotic drink is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic, invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. Here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. Pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. Just remember to make Z-Biotics your first drink of the night. Drink responsibly, and you'll feel your best tomorrow. Go to zbiotics.com/lockedoncollege to learn more and get 15% off your first order when you use Locked On College at checkout. Z-Biotics is backed with a 100% money-back guarantee, so if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Remember to head to zbiotics.com/lockedoncollege and use code LOCKEDONCollege at checkout for 15% off. Z-Biotics is a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. We're also brought to you here today by our friends over at FanDuel. It's America's #1 sports book. Get in on the NFL action this weekend. We had an amazing Thursday night game last night between the Pittsburgh Steelers and Cleveland Browns, and more exciting NFL games coming your way this weekend. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL and a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. Okay, let's keep rolling, talking Duke and Arizona, talking about our friends at FanDuel specifically. You look at this one, and right now the Wildcats favored by 1.5, a really close game, as expected, I think, when you see two top 20 teams right now in the rankings, both teams wanting to make a big run come March. It makes me think, Isaac, are we set for a game in which the bench can decide things for both of these teams? What does that look like to you?
Well, it's a good question. I think let's go player by player, personnel wise for Duke. I think for Malik Brown, when he checks into the game, physicality, right, against a very, very strong, sizey Arizona front court that really wants to murder you on the offensive glass. So that's going to be enormous for him. On the other end as well, that offensive rebounding is going to be key. He has been awesome at that this year, giving Duke multiple second chance opportunities. He gives you some kind of one of those bigs you can kind of drop it off to in the short roll, play 4-on-3 basketball, and you can trust him to make plays as a passer as well. I think that could be on display as well, and his speed could potentially give Arizona's bigs some problems. Let's go to Zion James. Again, another physical guard. I think he's going to be right at home in a game like this. Yeah. That's going to be kind of a boxing match.
Absolutely.
I think that you feel pretty good about him. And then Mason Gillis as well. Like, that dude hasn't missed many days in the weight room either. Like, he is big and strong. And I think those transition threes for Gillis is one area to watch as well, because if you can kind of beat Arizona at their own game, like we talked about, in transition in the open floor, that's going to be a huge key factor, and Gillis can certainly do that. So those are the three guys off the bench that I'm looking at. For Arizona, their bench, they're talented, but they haven't done a lot from a guards perspective. Anthony Delorso, Campbell transfer, he's only a junior this year. He's kind of trying to figure out what my role is. His basic job for Arizona is just to get threes up, because not many other guys like to do that. Carter Bryant, 5-star freshman, really athletic. They continue to stay big when they sub him in, but they get a little bit more skill when he's on the floor as well. And then we've talked about the stable of bigs a ton, right? With Krivas and Awaka and Visar. Like all three of those guys are basically starters. They just rotate in and out. They kind of do that as well. So Duke's bench is better, I think, than Arizona's bench. Will it be tomorrow? I'm not sure, but I really think that Gillis's threes in transition, James's physicality, and Brown's offensive rebounding and switchability defensively, those are going to be key. Because I mean, again, like Brown being out and James being out late against that Kentucky team, I thought really impacted them defensively as well. I think they're at their best when one or two of those guys are on the floor.
Yeah, no doubt. When you list off those players there in particular, it's the experience transfers making an impact, and that number settles in at 8, the 5 starters and these 3 guys, and that was the 8 players that we saw play against Kentucky. This time of year, there's always conversation about what's the right number of players to be getting a run. What does your rotation look like and that sort of thing? Because Duke's also got really good freshman scorers in Isaiah Evans and Darren Harris. Over the weekend, we saw the college debut of Patrick Ngamba II, a big 6'11", 250-pounder. That's nice to have coming off of your bench. That's my question, Isaac, as we still kind of gear up for ACC play. We know that the start of next week, we've got the Kansas game for Duke in Las Vegas. They've still got Auburn in the week following that. How much deeper can this team go? Will it just simply end up being that 8-man rotation for John Shire?
I think it's 8, but you feel pretty good about some of the other guys that you have deeper down in case you have injuries. We've heard a lot of buzz about Darren Harris in the preseason on our end, of just like the type of player that he is, just a high floor addition who can knock down shots. I wouldn't be surprised if Zion James, say he's not making threes, or say, Caleb Foster continues to have a little bit of struggles making threes at time. Maybe Darren Harris is that guy who could potentially earn a bigger role as just hey, we know when he comes in the floor, just a catch and shoot assassin. So I think he would maybe be my favorite pick of the 9 there. Maybe if you're continuing to run into offensive issues, you still can tap the Isaiah Evans button and be like, all right, let's unwrap this box and let's go to work with this. So that's kind of the beauty of having a roster like this. And because there's haves and have-nots in basketball this year. And I think you're starting to see some of these rosters are absolutely jam-packed with talent near the top of the sport. Everybody matters. You're going to need everybody at this point this year. So I like the 8 that they have right now. I think if I went 9, it'd be Harris. Or Evans, excuse me. I guess I would be Harris. And then, you can kind of see what the Evans what type of version of Evans you get on any given night.
Hey, it seems like the coaching staff's doing that themselves, right? It's Harris, it's Evans, it's Harris, it's Evans, which speaks to, both those guys trying to get their opportunity. I think about the Kentucky game too, but in that first half, we loved the first half because it's a 9-point lead for Duke, and then things really go kind of sour there in the second half. But both Cooper Flagg and Kama Malawach are on the bench with 2 fouls late. Malik Brown's out there having to play with 3, and Patrick Ngamba II hadn't quite been cleared yet to play. So there's another big-time player on the interior that, if needed, now you've got added front court depth.
Especially for an Arizona team that loves to draw a ton of fouls.
Yeah.
Because Krivas will try to get you in foul trouble, and Awaka will try to get you in foul trouble, and Lewis is always trying to get you in foul trouble.
Well, that's good to hear then. Okay, yeah.
One guy I haven't even mentioned either is Trey Townsend as well. He's going to be a big, big factor with this one too. The Oakland transfer, he's kind of maybe their answer to some of the half-court issues when Caleb Love is not playing well. Is, hey, let's get Townsend the ball in those long isolation post-ups, those mid-post isolation type of stuff. I would expect Cooper Flagg to get that assignment on him. I don't think that Townsend's game is going to work very well when Cooper's guarding him. I'll just say that. And if Cooper can dominate that matchup one-on-one and take him out of the game, that's just one less option, I think, for an Arizona half-court offense that has some holes in it.
Man, I really hope we're ready to see a big Cooper Flagg game and a big-time night for Duke. I haven't played at the McKell Center in 34 years, so it'll be good to see that Duke uniform out there in Arizona for this time matchup. Isaac, the time is always greatly appreciated, man. Do me a favor. How can people support you, promote some of the work that you've had out as of late? What can they expect if they give you a follow?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Isaac_Trotter. And then my stuff is on 247sports.com, which is more like previews and power rankings. And then on CBS, I have a weekly 10 things column. If you like the NBA and remember Zach Lowe's 10 things that he do for ESPN, I do a similar thing for college basketball. So it's kind of film heavy and nerdy and kind of some fun stuff, just breaking down, little intricacies of the game or little things that we popped up with some personnel. So it's fun. And that's a column every week that I really enjoy putting together. But yeah, that's where you can find me on CBS Sports or 247 Sports.
Awesome. Appreciate the time, Isaac. We'll do it again soon, okay?
Thanks for having me.
All right, that's Isaac Trotter joining us here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils, and that's going to do it for our show here today. Man, I'm super excited for this game to play out. A late one to watch here on the East Coast, 10:30 p.m. Eastern, but watch it. Duke and Arizona, going to be fun. That'll do it for our show. As always, go Duke. I'll talk to you again soon. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you, and good day.